If you're not already subscribed to this YouTube channel, go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, along with the bell icon so you can be notified whenever a new video is posted. And if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. And of course, be sure to give the video a like, as well as share it on your social media. The white supremacists hate that. And now, the Sunday address. First of all, I want to give a salute to Brother Tariq, not only for the work that he's put in to push the issue of reparations, especially in California, but also for helping to publicize this latest development, though devolvement would be much closer to it. Long story short, pressure had been put on that California Reparations Task-Force to make sure that they didn't try to expand it into being quote-unquote reparations for all. And as a result of the hard pushback that they encountered from the black grassroots, we knew that these guys were going to be trying some sort of dirtbag move. We can be disgusted by this, but not surprised. Long story short, the so-called Reparations Task-Force out in California put together their so-called report last year, 111 pages of nothing, and on cue, you got the black bootlicks in California state legislature who have been proposing a number of bills that are supposed to be reparations bills. This is what the white media is calling them. Nobody else calls them reparations bills, certainly not the black grassroots, but this is what the white media calls them. And the 14 measures introduced by the Legislative Black Caucus touches on education. That means money to HBCUs or some other school vouchers, and civil rights, which means nothing at all. As Dr. Claude Anderson said, who the hell is civil? And criminal justice. What is that supposed to mean? More sensitivity training for racist cops? And it includes reviving a years-old effort to restrict solitary confinement that failed to make it out of the State House as recently as last year. Now, this is something they're naming that has nothing to do with actual reparations itself. You don't need a reparations package in order to be changing criminal justice statutes. What you need is to get those racist Democrats out of office. When Kamala Harris was Attorney General of California, she was violating people's rights every chance she got, and the California political machine put its full weight behind making her a U.S. Senator. And to show you just what a total nothing this is, you had one Democratic Assembly member who said that the California Constitution needed to be changed to fund programs aimed at increasing the life expectancy of, improving educational outcomes for, or lifting out of poverty specific groups based on race, color, ethnicity, national origin, or marginalized genders, sexes, or sexual orientations. Now, what does that have to do with slavery at all? National origin, that means immigrants. Race or color, we're only talking about one color, black. Marginalized genders. Oh, so slavery had to do with whether or not you were LGBT. Is that it? This is supposed to be what counts as black leadership in California. Other proposals include protections for natural and protective hairstyles in all competitive sports. Oh, so slavery was based on hairstyles. See, if we had just been putting some sort of relaxer on our hair, they would have left us alone, see? And of course, because the stupid train is never late, a formal apology by the governor and legislature for the state's role in human rights violations and crimes against humanity on African slaves and their descendants. An apology? Now, Brother Khalid Muhammad told you what he thought about apologies when he was talking about the Catholic Church.
I say I criticize the Pope. I don't have any respect for the Pope. So damn what? The Pope don't like me. The Pope does not respect my leader and teacher, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He has no respect for the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he is one of the perpetrators in our genocide and our current condition. That's right. You offer an apology? We are sorry. Everybody else gets reparation, but you offer us, I owe you an apology. We are so sorry. No, use your influence to get reparations for us.
These are the kind of things that your black legislative caucus in California is proposing as reparations. We need to protect hairstyles. We need an apology. Give us an apology. Gee, sounds just like Jonathan putting on his cape art, doesn't it? What black people really want is an apology. They don't want money. They want an apology. Notice how all these bootlicking scumbags all use the exact same verbiage. That's how you know that they've been coached on exactly what to say. These so-called proposals are like someone saying that a highway funding bill should count as reparations. And you'll notice that that's been a steady drumbeat by the white media, this deliberate anti-black propaganda where they put these bought and paid for bootlicks in front of the cameras or have them copied in print saying that anything should count as reparations. They say that anything at all is reparations. Well, you're claiming that you're going to be changing some street lights. Oh, well, that should count as reparations. Yeah, anything other than cash. So the same psychotic anti-black racism that you see in Texas or Florida, you also see as alive and well and kicking in California. They just do their anti-black racism with a smile. This was the state's legislative black caucus who came up with these do-nothing proposals. They're agents, full stop. As I always tell you, nothing happens in a vacuum under white supremacy. That's why the San Francisco NAACP was out there long before this so-called Reparations Task-Force report was even issued, and the San Francisco NAACP was leading the charge, openly opposing cash reparations. See, what they were doing was they were preparing the ground for what they knew was going to come afterwards. And when they got caught out, they gave a phony statement acting like, well, we're walking this one back, but no one was fooled. The decrepit head of the NAACP was also the so-called pastor at Kamala Harris's church. And people actually wonder why church attendance in the black community, especially among young black people, has plummeted. These bootlicks hate us. They hate the black community. Far as they're concerned, we ain't gonna let y'all troublemakers ruin it for the rest of us. That's what's going on here. White power will can these clowns the instant that white power thinks it doesn't need them. They live in mortal fear of that. And they should, because the bootlicks don't have a plan B. This is the traitor class trying to prove that they're still in charge, or at least that they can push back against the black community, because that's what this is. They are not at war merely with just the black grassroots, they're at war with the black community in general. This is about them proving that they're the main overseers on the plantation, and they're going to keep the rest of us in line, making sure that we don't threaten their supply of butter biscuits. See, the bootlicks consider us to be their biggest threat. Look at what that clown Stephen Reed said about the black voters of Birmingham. The bootlicks hate the black community. They cannot stand us. As they see it, if the black community would just stop making demands and stop causing problems with how we constantly fight the status quo and try to institute a system of justice, if we would just knock it off with that, then the bootlicks' lives would be so much easier. They could get their butter biscuits, wag their tails, and enjoy what few crumbs fall from Mass's table in peace, and not get hit over the head occasionally and be told, how come the niggers is getting uppity? The bootlicks are terrified of white supremacy failing, because the only skill the bootlick has is kissing masses behind. They can't work for a living because licking boots is not a marketable skill. And they know the black community isn't going to feed them, and they're right. I'll see the bootlick's stomachs touch their backbones before I give them a crumb. And I know you won't give them anything either, and they know it too. In their minds, that justifies what they do, because as they see it, they're in an existential crisis. It's life and death for them. And the source of that crisis is us. It's life and death because they have no other option. Why do you think that after Trump threw out Omarosa, she came slithering back to the community, pretending like she had been playing the part of a double agent all along? And Michael Steele hasn't had anything good to say about the GOP since he got tossed out as chairman. When they get kicked off the gravy train, they all sing a different tune. If white supremacy loses its power, that would be the end of the world for the bootlick, and they're right. It would be the end of their world, and here we are trying to usher it in. Now, the Grassroots has made it very clear exactly what reparations means. Cash payments to black people who can trace their lineage back to the killing fields of the American South. And the message has gotten through. Even the white media was forced to admit that this proposal by these bootlicking Negroes will be recognized for the sellout that it is. These bootlicks in California's Black Caucus certainly know it. So what do? They do finger-wagging and lecturing. Quote, while many only associate direct cash payments with reparations, the true meaning of the word to repair involves much more, Assemblymember Lori Wilson said. So she's going to tell us what reparations is? Well, while many, no, not many, all. Only a handful of bootlicks disagree. All of the black community recognizes that only cash payments counts as reparations. The true meaning of the word. See how they talk to us? This is like Roly-Poly Martin and the rest of these fools. They're always talking down to us. Well, we gotta tell you dumb niggers what it actually means. The true meaning of the word. This is where they start lying. They gotta redefine it. This is what the state's white power wants. Gavin Newsom opposes cash reparations. They'll give millions overnight to illegal aliens. They'll give it to start a war in Israel. To kickstart a war in Ukraine, they will instantly, on a moment's notice, immediately find tens of billions of dollars to appropriate to any other group for any other reason. And they will do it for people who are not even citizens. For people who come here from outside countries, for Israel, for Ukraine, but when it comes to black Americans, all of a sudden there ain't no money. And even if there is, they don't like it. See, that's the thing about Gavin Newsom. He didn't say the money's not there. He just said he doesn't like it. That's what we're up against. And you got a bunch of Negroes who are helping them do it. How is this any different than the Republicans, by the way? For the Democrats, a Democrat state like California doing all this, how is this any different than the GOP? The only reason these sellouts are even in office is because they gave the white powers that be every reassurance that they'll be the black faces carrying out white powers' dictates. As the black media, we warned you this was the goal from the very beginning. When they saw that reparations wasn't going away as an issue, that we weren't going to drop it, we told you they'd come up with this sham. The con job would be to try to invent a new phony definition of reparations. One that would have nothing to do with anything tangible for us. That was the goal from the very beginning. So they put together this bit of political theater. Why, we got ourselves a Reparations Task-Force. Who's on it? Oh, these little house Negroes we've had back in the house, chained up to the side of the house for the last 20 years. That was meant to give legitimacy to their attempt to redefine what constitutes reparations. They keep saying that over and over again. This Lori Wilson saying, while many only associate direct cash payments with reparations, the true meaning of the word involves much more. No, what happened to us was not done for the sake of a school voucher. It wasn't done for the sake of a couple of land deeds. It was done for money. And the only way to make reparations is to force these racist bastards to be divested of the very thing that they did all of that enslaving and all of that racial deprivation of the black community for, money. Their goal is to try to redefine what constitutes reparations and to also redefine who it ought to apply to. This was the real objective from the very start, to try to short-circuit the drive for economic justice for the country's former slaves, make sure the status quo doesn't change, and get some sellout Negroes to be the face of this con job. The entire point of this phony reparations task force was to manufacture a new pretend definition of reparations, one that's meant to give the Democrats a way to claim that they gave us reparations, all the while doing nothing. And I told you for the longest time, this is what the game would be. They would come up with some slate of do-nothing burgers and then say, we're going to go ahead and pass some laws here. We're going to call them reparations laws. And then afterwards, they'll say, well, the black community's status hasn't changed. Nothing changed for... we gave them reparations. What else can we do? Okay, we're moving on. As far as we're concerned, we have now atoned for the greatest crime in human history. Far as we're concerned, this is now a dead issue because we're declaring it so. This was what this little phony, pathetic bit of political theater was meant to achieve, to try to manufacture that particular talking point. They had hoped to make reparations into a grab bag for every other conceivable non-FBA group, including and starting with immigrants. But the family out west, especially Brother Tariq and others, stepped up and shut that door, slammed it in their faces. And they've been furious about that because that wasn't supposed to happen. Their plan had been spoiled from the jump. They had been prevented from redefining who reparations should apply to, and having been robbed of the ability to say reparations for all, definitely not just for these former slaves, they then did what the San Francisco NAACP had been demanding. Empty gestures that are meant to prop up these corrupt and crumbling old civil rights fossils. And it needs to be said, you'll notice how you got these black baby boomers, these decrepit elders who are skinning and grinning the most. They're the ones who are the happiest with this. They're glad that they helped white power to defy justice and the will of the black community, and they're all looking forward to whatever crumbs they expect white power to give them for this treason. And even the white media knows that this is going to be recognized for the fraud it is. They had to mention that no cash payments will be immediately recognized as not being reparations at all. The white media knows this is a nothing burger. That's why they're not screaming bloody murder about it. Shouldn't they be attacking this as outrageous and controversial? That's the white media's favorite word whenever anything the black community demands is being put in the headlines. The white media has their narrative. The black community's demanding this or that. That's controversial. But now, all of a sudden, for this first in the nation reparations package, no, all of a sudden they're not using the word controversial. That's how you know that they're in favor of it, because it's no threat to white power. This is all just gesturing and posturing. It doesn't mean anything. Dr. John Henrik Clarke taught us that when it comes to dealing with these white supremacists, you don't make any demand that doesn't require them to give up their power. If they're comfortable with what you're saying, then obviously it doesn't mean anything. And you know the DNC dictated to these bootlicks what they ought to say, what these proposals should be. Now let's also understand something else. Tangibles for our lineage is the standard operating procedure for us. This is our political issue. Money. We want money from this wicked system that our ancestors built and that we have sustained. The fight for justice is a marathon, not a sprint. The enemy has done exactly what we expected, and we're going to do exactly what they don't expect. We are going to remain persistent. We are not going to let them demoralize us. Anyone who comes in here talking that demoralized, talking that, oh man, reparations ain't going to happen, you're going to get automatically blocked. We don't do defeatism around here. We understand the political realities of the struggle that we have chosen to engage in. Cash reparations is not going away. They won't be able to wait us out on this because this is our political issue. Even if slavery had never happened, we would still be owed money due to the fact that we are citizens. That's what the government's supposed to do for citizens, distribute resources to the citizens for their benefit. We have never benefited from that. Whites had it through the Homestead Act, through compensation packages for white soldiers returning from both world wars, and those packages like federally subsidized housing mortgages and GI bills, redlining, and a raft of other whites-only programs are what built the white middle class. It wasn't the result of hard work and persistence on their part. It was a government handout policy, the largest in human history, meant to specifically enrich and benefit only white citizens and to do it at black citizens' expense to try to reduce us to a permanent underclass. And black people were and have always been completely locked out of these programs. Whites aren't targeted for redlining or to have their property systematically stolen by both government and private interests, from real estate developers to universities. Black people are subjected to all of these deprivations. The answer is cash reparations, and to make those who benefited from our economic deprivation pay up. We don't need scholarships. Give me cash and I'll pay for my own education. We don't need money for HBCUs. Give me money and I won't need a degree because I'll be able to start my own business. The reason black people are mistreated with impunity in the injustice system is because we don't have the economic power to defend ourselves in court or to put moral and conscientious prosecutors in office. We don't have the money to put moral people on the bench as judges. We don't have the money to hold prison officials to account for illegal and unconstitutional conditions in these prisons. When Kamala Harris was Attorney General of California, she defied court rulings that called out the prisons for being so overcrowded that they violated the cruel and unusual punishment statute of the U.S. Constitution. Black people didn't make her Attorney General. White power did that through their goofball, bootlick scumbag, low-down Willie Brown. And if we had the resources, she would never have been Attorney General or even in government. Look. The fight for our reparations, the fight for our tangibles, begins with reparations, but it's not going to end there. We won't stop demanding cash reparations because that is our issue. So the longer they hold out, the harder we push. See, these bootlicks are trying to carry water for white power, but they may make it seem like they're just not responsible for it, so they'll try to hide behind white Democrats. But when these bootlicks say that they don't support cash reparations, they always yell at us and scold us. They're not sorry or disappointed. They make it clear they're mad at us for even making the demand. We're putting pressure on them and they want that pressure to stop. They'll try to claim, well, it's these white politicians. They're never gonna get behind it. We got to be realistic now. Y'all need to stop demanding things that they just ain't wanting to do. White power didn't want to end chattel slavery. We were told for over 2 centuries to be realistic. You're outnumbered. Slavery's not going to end. You need to ask for better conditions on the plantation, but you don't need to be demanding an end to slavery. And then we broke the slave masters' backs. And it wasn't these smiling butt kissers who did it either. They were the ones who were protecting massa back then, and they're still doing it today. The same house Negroes who we were dealing with during slavery have now moved from Massa's house to the State House of Representatives. But their job hasn't changed one iota. White power handpicked these traitors and handed them the political jobs they've got. That's why whenever you have some function or gathering where the local racist sheriff or the local police chief or the local do-nothing city councilman who's got nothing but greasy racist things to say about black people is going on, you look at those pictures and such, you always see these same black misleaders right there with them at the party, taking photos and smiling and yucking it up with them. No matter what they may say to you, Whenever they get around the white powers that be, all of a sudden they become the obedient little pets that they are. This kind of sellout anti-black racism is what's happening in California, liberal California. And it's Democrats leading the charge against us. So tell me again how they're supposed to be different from and better than the Republicans. Look, we can be disgusted at this, but we can't lie and say that we're surprised. This is what happens when you start forcing the machine to do things it doesn't want to do. The bastards will fight you. They were humiliated and furious that they had been stopped from implementing their Reparations for All scheme. They had that pathetic congressional hearing, and we're doing the same thing, saying reparations can take many forms. It doesn't have to be money. This is them trying to do political counter-programming against the message we've been pushing. That's how you know these are people repeating talking points given to them by white power, because they're all saying it consistently across the board. All these fools who never say the same thing, for the few who can even speak. And yet when it comes to this, they're all reading off the exact same sheet of music. That congressional hearing wasn't a hearing at all. It was a public disservice announcement, political theater meant to say that Negroes on the left and the right, well, they can't agree about much on reparations, but all of them can agree it shouldn't be money. So the bootlicks have predictably done what we thought they were going to do. They try to propose some do-nothing garbage. I've been telling you this for years. The goal is going to be to try to put forward some slate of absolute gibberish, empty nothing burgers and claim, see, we did reparations. This is what they're going to try to do. They can only be successful if we decide to give up and let them get away with it. We continue to push. We keep applying the pressure. The white media will try to declare this as the final chapter of the reparations issue. We, on the other hand, are going to make it clear this was only round one. This is the political equivalent of a war of attrition, and we're going up against an enemy that has far more resources than we do. The good news, though, is even though they may have us outnumbered, we've got them outclassed. And when that's the situation, the war becomes a matter of will. For over 150 years, reparations hasn't even been an issue. But now in the 21st century, it is. How do you think that happened? Because we would not let this go. That is the determining factor in whether we reach our goal. If we decide that we're going to quit, and that's what everything they've done has been geared toward. Trying to tell us, oh, it's over now. See, we've already done it. We're just getting past you guys. They know that we can break their backs, but what they don't know is whether or not we're going to continue to apply the pressure. Whoever gives up first loses. Our job is to make sure that isn't us. Good evening, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors. Eric Bailey, Codified Trucking, Ogun Spirit, Morris Bodden, and Sakina Collins. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.